Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emma Shea Perfecto. I'm the Deputy Director for Oregon Public Defense Commission. It is my pleasure to welcome you all today as we embark on an exciting new chapter of our agency. We're very excited. We want to thank you for attending, even virtually, and thank you for being here. Some of you know that on October 15th, we launched a request for proposal known as an RFP. For the new software system. Because of the request, it doesn't close until December, so we can only talk about certain things and we cannot talk about the RFP specifically. Those are some of the rules that we have as a state organization. So we haven't chosen the software yet. This is our early launch, and it's really our outreach to really talk about what is happening in FCMS. You see some of our team members here, and they'll all individually go through their part of the project and what they're working on and what that's looking like. So, and I know one of the things is changes is not always the best thing. People get very comfortable, and new systems, especially these days, is never something that we're super excited about. But as an agency, we see the promise that this will bring and some of the changes that we're hoping that FCMS system will do for us. So I will pass baton to David Martin, who is our newish CIO. He's been here for 6 months and he's taken on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma Shea. So my name's David. I'm the CIO here at the agency. I've been here for a handful of months, and I want to talk, before I get into my slide, I want to just really quickly talk about how we've gotten here, how we've arrived to this moment. When I got here last spring, I started flat-footed. We didn't have team. We didn't obviously have the technology. Didn't have a sense of what this agency was trying to do, and so it took time to find the right people. So I want to talk a little bit, just real quickly, about that. In the time between then and today, I've been able to bring on 2 project managers. One you'll get to hear from this afternoon. Brought on 2 business analysts that have been essential to getting through the documentation of all these project artifacts. Some amazing vendors, our quality assurance with Ron Hittner and Moss Adams around organizational change management. And of course, since I'm the CIO, I'll save the best for last, talk about the technical folks that I've been able to bring on. I've had 11 people come on the IT side of the house, 4 of which are really deeply tied to this effort right here. And it's the reason why I bring that up is because it's really the reason why we are here is because it's taken all of those people to come together in collaboration and cooperation to move us forward. And I think state government gets the reputation for things taking time getting through things, whether it's private or government, public or private. Like, we have gone at light speed to be at a spot right now today where we are actively receiving vendor interest around this technology space, and we'll talk more about that a little later. So with that said, FCMS, Financial Case Management System, the purpose of why we're here today. And I won't read the slide per se, I'll let you read the slide, but this project is really two pillars. You have the financial side, where we are going to be taking an IT modern technology approach to financing. How do we process invoicing? How we bring a lot of that, how we reduce the human touch so things happen faster, happen more accurately and more timely. And then there's the case management side, where we're going to really have a system that's it's a standardized platform where you're going to be able to, or we as an agency are going to be able to get data around the casework that we do here in Oregon to really help us move forward and be strategic around how we address the unrepresented crisis here in Oregon. I'll drop down to the last couple bullets down there. So phase 1, obviously it includes the finance, the case management, the time tracking. It's going to span about a year and a half, and that number is an educated guess. Obviously, we don't have a vendor selected at this time. We're going to be able to tighten up that time frame when we get through this request for proposal process. But that's an educated guess. And then the additional phases may take up to 3 years. And that really just speaks to the fact that we have a lot of legacy systems. This is a complex process technology that we're rolling out, and you have one chance to do it correctly. So we're going to take a very intentional approach to this project. Next slide. So project objectives. So we're going to streamline the financial and case management side, enhance the efficiency of submitting invoices, managing caseloads, tracking time, allowing for faster and more accurate processing. And really, that's just another way of saying we are going to bring automation and logic to how we manage finances here. Again, we're going to reduce the human touch. We're going to reduce the human error. We're going to improve processing time, and really transparently to our users and our customers, we're going to have that back-end logic to the system so that things move through with as little human intervention as possible to have accurate and timely issuing of finances. Improving reporting and compliance. Provide more robust data reporting tools to better meet legislative requirements and support decision-making. You may or may not have heard, but data is the most valuable asset that any agency can have. And data is going to be what's going to allow our agency and our executive team and leadership to help really refine and understand how we can strategically make the most effective use of our resources as an agency and you as stakeholders and providers, that we can help put people in the right place to help the Oregonians here. Ensure timely payment, strengthen and simplify the payment process for providers, attorneys, investigators, and we're going to pay you quicker. I think that's obviously going to be one of those things that we are primarily watching for. And then support for long-term growth. And that's really, from a technology standpoint, something that we lack. We are, again, I've said this a few times, but we do not have a modern approach to how we do our businesses right now. We have legacy systems, older technologies, things that are not best of breed. And we are going to be able to bring in a common platform that's going to be modern, that's going to be intuitive, and it's going to allow us to grow as the agency grows and grow as we bring on more providers.
Are you going to take a year and a half to ensure timely payments? Since you said it was going to take a year and a half to have the system in place?
I'll have to get back to you on that answer. But my take is I'll be able to answer that far better when we have our vendors selected. So much is not understood until we have the actual vendor selected. I would say probably not, but at the same time, I don't want to make some broad statement that's going to be fact moving forward. So I'm assuming we're going to have another engagement like this in once we get through some further phases. It's just right now, it's just we have a very hazy outlook until we know who we're working with.
Thank you.
Yep.
I should have said my name, Steve Cora.
Thank you. Thank you. Next slide.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Knobloch, lead project manager for the financial and case management system at OPDC. This slide shows some project milestones that I'm going to walk us through. We're sharing the critical milestones for financial and case management system with you today. Each milestone marks our steady progress, showing where we are in the project and what's in line next. We've already completed stage gate 2, which is defined as resource and solution planning and analysis, that was approved on October 14th, which allowed us to post our request for proposal. We're carefully tracking each milestone now in 3 tracks of work: procurement, change management, and stage gate 3 work. Procurement milestones started in October 2024 and run through March 2025. Starting back in September 2024 through March 2025, we will also be working on a change management track of work led by our change management vendor, Moss Adams. Their change management discovery work milestones, which I'll share more about later, Run alongside our procurement timeline, which includes the request for proposal that was published to Oregon Buys on October 15th, 2024, and addressing questions around our RFP by November 26th, 2025. Further into procurement, we'll be going through round one evaluations, completing them by January 22nd, 2025. We also have round two evaluations and scoring that will complete by February 24th, 2025. Future procurement milestones we look forward to are system demos, as well as the notice of intent to award the selected vendor, which we're estimating to be published sometime in March 2025. This timeline shows our commitment to building an efficient, well-supported financial and case management system. Next slide. Here we see a visual high-level timeline of the financial and case management project. We have change management, procurement, milestones, and other project work, which include the development of implementation project artifacts occurring within the same time frame, which are required to ensure our governance project goals are met. We kicked off this process within the implementation planning phase, which is defined as stage gate 3, by publishing the RFP on October 15th, with clear procurement milestones for submission, evaluation, and selection. Work actively to prepare for stage gate 3 endorsement by the state corresponds to a project's detailed implementation planning prep work. Upon approval, we will work towards a stage gate 3 endorsement memorandum. At this time, we aim to receive stage gate 3 endorsement where the scope, schedule, and budget baselines are set for the project. We will also be in our final stages of planning and conducting negotiations, contract review, etc. in March 2025. As mentioned earlier, you'll see a track of work for change management that will be shared more in detail later in this presentation by our change management vendor, Moss Adams. By following the structured timeline, we're ensuring that our milestones plan will meet OPDC's operational and project governance, while establishing a solid foundation for the financial and case management system project long-term. And one note as we go through the next slide, we do have a question and answer round at the end, so please do save your questions for the question and answer round. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Ernest Lynette to speak on FCMS benefits for OPDC.
Thank you, Mary. Hi, my name is Ernie Landed. I'm Chief Defender of the Criminal Appellate Section with the Appellate Division. I've been with the agency for a little over 20 years and have been asked to kind of highlight some of the benefits that we hope that users will have. David hit on some of these and what the actual goals are. This is really about trying to improve both the agency and the attorneys working within the agency, but then also the professionals that are working outside in public defense and how the systems that you use to kind of do your job. You know, I don't think it'll change any of the work, the professional work that we do. I wish I could say that would write my briefs for me, but I don't think that's going to happen. But what we do hope it will be is that even though that system hasn't been selected, we're confident that we wanted to make these other benefits. One of them is better case management functionality. When I joined the office, we had transitioned from a card catalog system and paper files to an Microsoft Access database program and paper files. That system had very limited functionality to basically record events and would exist alongside a paper file. Our system, we worked in-house and got it to where it was more than an activity log that we could generate templates and letters and really reduce down on some of the automate some of the routine notices that we have to do and routine processes that we have to do. We're looking to modernize that to the next step where we actually get to some more workflow construction where things are not only automated in some of these template protection or creation, but also will project onto like the next step in the process and kind of like even as we practice in our office, there's a lot of relying on emails and notifications going into some office saying this is ready now. Hopefully we'll get some of that tightened up where it's just a workflow process that can be implemented. Reporting case management tools. I mean, the reporting from this agency has been a rough spot for a long time. I think that everyone knows that we've been faulted for not being able to bring the numbers of cases and outcomes and what our clients, who our clients are and what they're facing. We're hoping that the system is a way that some data can be generated, reliable data, that we're not relying purely on other agency systems, and be able to make a case for the budgetary needs that we have from our that our clients need, but that our providers need to serve those clients, and help with case forecasting and management of that. Of course, this is going to be a system that the agency is providing to providers to use. So that's going to be not an additional cost to you. The benefit there is that you'll be running on a system that the agency is using. So to the extent that you now have to run on your own systems and then do duplicate work to re-enter that same information into our systems, we'll hope that this new system, that's a seamless experience, that you're kind of recording your own work and activities and needs in our system, and that will trigger some of the kinds of processes that now you have to stop your work and go back and actually notify our office to kind of get the payment part of the things done. We are very dedicated to having IT support and training for everyone who's going to be using the system. That's something that's going to be necessary because it is going to be a completely new system for everyone. Of course, we're looking for something that will do calendaring and automated invoicing. I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about before, just helping ease with the way in which you are working your cases or your professional services that you're delivering, but then using also a system that we're providing that interfaces with the entity that you're hoping will pay you promptly for that work that's done. And also David kind of mentioned this at the end, but then this added features, the idea that this is going to be a product that is going to be customizable to our needs as a public defense entity and a public defense providers throughout the state, and not trying to being allowed to kind of adapt the system for the needs we have, kind of like we've seen in the Oregon Judicial Department using ACMS, its case management system for the appellate courts, or the ones with the circuit courts, how they're able to kind of customize it to the needs that they need for their purposes. So we're committed to making this partnership more efficient and effective through these employment improvements, and we'll continue to provide updates and communicate clearly about the system capabilities. The project progresses and we get a better idea of who we are going to be working with. Thank you.
Thanks, Ernie. So challenges and known risks. I'll actually talk about these in order in which they give me the most heartburn. I'll start with the ones that give me the least, and they're the ones closest to the technology. Again, I'm the CIO. I probably feel more comfortable around the data migration. That's the first item there. Ensuring existing data, if deemed necessary to transfer, is smoothly migrated to the system. These are, regardless of industry, regardless of technology, data migration, there's known ways of strategies mitigating those things. So I feel strongly confident. While we are still going to be tracking that, I'm not saying it's risk-free, but I feel like we are. I talked about those technology folks I've been able to hire. We have world-class staff here from an IT perspective. So with that in mind, with also getting to benefit, leverage the state of Oregon State Data Center, as well as being wise with the right vendor, the data migration piece is going to be something that I have a strong degree of confidence in, regardless of the fact that it is indeed still yet a challenge. System implementation, you'll see a theme here, another technology piece, right? So strong confidence around building a strong, effective partnership with our vendor for successful implementation. And it's the same sort of story where we get to leverage both our fantastic staff here at the agency, as well as the state of Oregon, the state data center, and then utilizing the IT competency of the vendor that's been selected. The final two are kind of linked. And I don't know if there's necessarily an order to it, but I'll start with user training. We can provide you the best technology with the best bells and whistles that does all the things, but if you don't know how to use the tool, you're going to have a certain opinion about that tool. So it is close to my heart that we do this well. So that's going to be something that we will be very closely watching, and the training is in scope with our request for proposal with any of the vendors that come knocking at our door, that training is a topic that we discuss. And there is clear delineation as to who's going to be owning what and how we're going to manage it, not just in the implementation, but for the life of the system. How is this system going to be supporting both internally within the agency as well as externally? And then the adoption. Encourage a broad adoption to make the new system the go-to for invoice submission. So obviously, if you don't know if the training is ineffective, or it's not timely, or it's just doesn't do what we need it to do, that's going to affect adoption. So the two are strongly linked. And what that really means is we're going to be managing both our vendors, as well as we have Moss Adams here as our organizational change management vendor. And we're going to be working very closely with both of those entities to make sure that we have both strong adoption as well as strong training. Next slide.
Great, and can you all hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay, perfect. Hello, great to be here. I'm Annie Fadley. I'm a consultant at Moss Adams. And as has been mentioned, we are a consulting firm that the agency has engaged for the change management side of this project. So I'm just going to talk to you a bit about that work today. And if you don't mind advancing this slide. So just quickly at the top here, this is the Moss Adams project team, just to give you a sense of the external resources that the agency is dedicating to the change management effort for this project. We are all organizational development consultants, so we work almost exclusively with public sector clients. A number of us are certified change practitioners, and our team partners with the agency on other projects as well. So we're familiar with public defense in Oregon, but we're right at the beginning of this particular project. And next slide, please. So what is change management? It's a very broad term, but it's really just a framework to thoughtfully approach any type of transition. So it's about really carefully planning how to prepare and support everyone who is involved in a change so that that change is as successful as it can be. So it's informed by thinking really deeply about who will be impacted, how they will be impacted, anticipating any unknowns, and really making sure that the right information is getting to the right people at the right time to successfully navigate a transition. So just to be clear, we are not involved in system selection at all. We are solely aimed at the people side of this project. And next slide. So just to give you a bit of insight into the stages of really any change management effort, a change strategy usually has these 4 phases, and the agency is in the very beginning phase right now. So initiate, working to really understand the impact of this change on people, processes, and tools. And the next phase is really where a tactical change plan comes together that will help the agency and providers and everyone impacted navigate the transition. Then the agency and Enable will work to implement that plan. So laying the groundwork to eventually launch the new system. And then after launching, really paying close attention to how it's going, measuring the benefits, continuing to offer resources and support as needed. And that is really, these 4 things together are years of work. Like you heard, this is a multi-year process, but just boiled down to 4 phases here. So on the next slide, we have a more detailed look at each phase under this framework. So the pink boxes here are the activities that fall under each of those phases of change management. And like I said, we are in initiate, so understanding the scope and impact of adopting a new system, and then starting to move into driving engagement around the transition. And we're doing that by speaking with impacted groups, starting to communicate about what is coming up, getting this process on everyone's radar, just like we're doing here today. And then the next phase after that will really focus on enabling the change. So this is where most of the thorny details get ironed out, really putting in place new support systems, rewriting policies and procedures as needed, hosting and providing trainings, all of the important things that really make it possible for people to use a new system. And then finally, the last phase, which is activate, is where the system is actually put into use. So you can see there's a lot of time right now between where we are, which is initiate, and this change actually happening in activate. And that time is going to be used to make sure that everyone is ready to go. The goal of change management is to ensure that everyone has what they need to make sure that they feel confident about the new system prior to being asked to use it. So really feeling confident on go live day about navigating the system, understanding new processes, everyone feels ready and able to do it on go live day is the goal. And that is only possible through what happens in the enable stage, so the training. And in the first couple phases prior to training, it's really common for folks to feel intimidated, to feel overwhelmed by a change, because these are kind of the phases where there are more unknowns than knowns, right? But when we start to move into enabling folks to take on a change, that's after the system has been selected, you start to kind of have those questions answered. It begins to feel a little bit more doable and a little bit more manageable. So that's just some context around what to expect throughout this process. And if you can go to the next slide. This is just some visibility into what Moss Adams will actually be delivering to the agency. So we were brought on this fall to begin preparing for the change management side of this project. So like we've said, we're in the early stages. Right now we're conducting discovery, which is that big O1 and 2 at the top there. And then over the next few months, we will be working to put together a report of what we've heard from folks about the impacts of this transition and really translate that into a change management strategy that will be finalized around February of next year. And then on the next slide, this is how we center our approach when we are working with our clients. So we're really focused on collaboration. Our goal is to hear from everyone who will be affected. So we want to know what you need to make this successful for you. What are you concerned about? What are you feeling good about? And to start to understand those things, we really undertake these tasks below. So we host work sessions and interviews. We review documents and data related to system use and processes, and we work really closely with everyone involved, really to make sure that the change management plan that we create is relevant, that it's thorough, it has taking everything into account that it needs to, and ultimately that it's effective, that it's helping to make this as easy of a transition as possible. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. This is just a high-level list of the groups that we are pulling into this effort, so giving us a comprehensive look into all impacted areas and work streams. And we wanted to show this just to really show that we understand and the agency understands the reach that this project is going to have. We don't take that lightly. We're taking a really methodical approach to the groups that we're engaging in this process. And so we're speaking with folks from really every corner of the agency. We're speaking with external attorneys and providers, making sure that we hit on all the big ticket topics. So groups related to finance, case management, time tracking, technology, compliance, really anything under the sun that this project touches. And then the next slide. Thank you. And this is my last slide, just some details on the outreach and discovery process that is currently underway. So we have held 18 sessions with agency staff and 7 sessions with providers and partners so far to kick off these conversations. And so those have been interviews and focus groups that have happened over the past month. We are also running a survey for providers to share feedback on this project, how it will impact you. And that survey is still open. I believe it closes at the end of the day today. So definitely consider sharing your thoughts there. And thank you to those that already done so. But that will not be the last chance to share your feedback by any means. There will be more opportunities going forward. And then, of course, we are working closely with the FCMS project team at the agency to navigate this effort. So I want to reiterate that we are committed to ensuring that this project is transparent, that it's a two-way conversation between the agency and providers, And we are really looking forward to working with you and happy to answer any questions at the end. And I can pass this off to the next speaker.
And I think that's me. Thank you, Annie, for your information. My name is Jessica Campy. I'm the Executive Director at the Office of, no, that's not where I work. At Oregon Public Defense Commission. I want to thank everybody in this room and who joined us online for participating in this conversation and for your time and interest in this project. I hope the presentation has provided information that's helpful to give you a clear understanding of our goals, expected benefits, possible challenges, and timelines for the program. We're excited about the potential for improvements in efficiency, payments, data collection, case management, and that this new software could provide. We understand that transitioning to a new program can raise a lot of questions and concerns for folks. And we want you to know that we are committed to supporting everyone through this process. Your feedback is incredibly important to us, so please don't hesitate to reach out with your thoughts and concerns as we move forward. And thank you for being part of today's session. I look forward to working with all of you as we take our next steps. And I think we're handing it over to Mary to do the Q&A.
Thank you, Jessica. Everyone will get started in our Q&A round. For those of you who would like to stay or have questions, just a quick note on rules of engagement for Q&A. We'll enter this round with respect and courtesy. We'll be committed to staying on topic. We will identify ways to bring clarity and conscientiousness to this discussion, welcoming in your viewpoint. We'll practice listening and patience, and we will be honoring time limits. So as we move through, please plan for 2 to 3 minutes each for your individual questions. And before we open the floor for questions, I do want to introduce our panel members we have here with us today and online. If we could start with the panel members here. Carla, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Carla Bethel, and I'm the accounts payable manager.
Gabe Doherty, I'm the budget and finance manager, been here for almost 3 years.
My name is Jenna Hart, I'm the procurement officer for OPDC.
Aaron Jeffers, Charter Vision.
Thank you, everyone. And for our panel members online, please go ahead and introduce yourself briefly. And if we could start with Tracy Colbert.
Hi, I'm Tracy Colbert. I'm a business systems analyst with the project.
And Leanne.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leanne Stivers. I am a senior manager with the Moss Adams team.
And Mark.
Oh, Mark Hicks, enterprise architect and tech lead on the OPDC project for FCMS.
Thank you, Mark. And Jennifer.
Jennifer, you're muted.
Thank you. Jason, and I'm one project managers.
I'm sorry, those last two people we couldn't do.
Yeah.
Yes, I will go ahead and share. Thank you, everyone online, and for being patient. We had Mark Hicks introduce himself. He is our technical expert and lead on FCMS. And we had Jennifer Sullivan, our project manager on FCMS. So at that time, we will open for questions. And feel free to raise your hand if you're online and you would like to ask a question as well. I do see we have about 50, close to 50 people attending online, so feel free to raise your hand. Yes.
Steve Gorham. I've been an attorney for almost 50 years. I've only done court appointment work. The state has always paid us. My concern is, how long is this gonna not only last before you get it together, but how long will it go? Since I've been involved, there was, to get experts, say, we developed an EEA process. That got changed by the state to an NRE process. That got changed to a CSS process, I think. And now it's a PEA? PAE, sorry. And however many days or months those processes keep changing, how do we know that after a year and a half, that the company that you hired to do some of this or most of this isn't gonna still exist 6 months later? And the processes that you have aren't gonna change every 2 weeks, every 3 months, every whatever.
That is an excellent question, and I'm going to break that out into 3 individual responses for you, Steve. If we could start with Jana, if you could speak to the procurement piece around how do we know a vendor we select will stay with us for a long time?
Well, we do have, in the RFP, we publish the terms and conditions of the contract that will support the project. We offer in the RFP for them to submit a binding offer to us that will have their proposed solution. And in it, part of that is a timeline, a project schedule, a project management plan for how they will not only implement the system and make sure that it runs, it does what it's supposed to do. There's a test plan that's part of their project management plan that we will evaluate. And so we will negotiate then with the successful, very successful proposer. We will negotiate the details of that project plan, including the timeline for implementation, and then a go live, and then how we're going to implement, how we're going to train, and we're looking also in terms of evaluating the system, what its past performance and history have been. For example, we require that they have at least 3 of other installations, and at least 1 of them has to be a governmental entity. So we're looking at, in the past, have they had changes very often? What do the other governmental entities that use this think of it? Do they see changes often? How well does it fit their business plan? And so we have elements of the RFP in place that look to how the system that they're proposing performs, and how well it is tailored to what we need. And so I hope that answers your question. So we're looking as best we can to identify those proposers that have a past performance and history of contracting well, of being responsible proposer, which is those are elements that are required by statute that we look at. You know, is it a company that's has a good place in the market, that has the equipment, the company, the people, the market share, the resources to fulfill the terms of the contract, because we're looking at a long-term relationship.
Mary, can I
Yes.
just add something to that? Like, you heard them talk about stage gate. So this is an implementation process with the state of Oregon, so with DAS. And there are certain elements that they're looking through each of these, that we call them stage gates. Like, you have these things in place, but one of the things that we will be looking at is the company's financials and their structure and who their employees are and their hierarchy there, as far as, like, you know, who's the director, how long have they been there, the experience. So we are looking at the companies to make sure that we're looking at that stability that you're asking for. But I just want to add that once you have one of these systems, those kinds of changes that you're talking about become more difficult, right? Because we can't change out the system every year. You can see the investment that we have. So once those systems are established, it's a refinement of it that may happen because we're hearing back from the providers. But just like, oh, we're not going to do that anymore, we're changing the name to this. We're buying an off-the-shelf system. So it is a customizable system, but it is a system that already exists. It's not being built just for this. So we're kind of locked in as to how much change we can actually do based on that system. Does that help answer that question a little bit more?
You know, what kind of consideration do you have if that system, if your contract is for 5 years and then on the 5th year, you want to use the same system, but they double the price.
I will direct that to our procurement officer, Janet.
So we also have terms and conditions in the contract that speak to contract term renewals, limits on the increases that there can be, as well as what we call refresh provisions, where if there is a newer technology, for example, maybe you want a mobile app to be able to be nimble in your business process. If that isn't, for example, if that wasn't a part of the initial implementation, we have terms in the contract that will allow us to negotiate that. But again, within a cost, we do a cost benefit analysis to see what, where it is in our budget. And there are limits on how much they can increase. So we kind of trying to take our best look forward in terms of what our future business needs will be, and as best we can, project those terms and limitations in the current contract.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you. Great questions. Any other questions in this space?
I have so many questions.
Yes, please.
But one of the things that, this is maybe more like a sharing to start, and then my question will come. But one of the things I think that is giving our office some anxiety is that we have cloud-based system. We have a system where we migrated a bunch of stuff and we've already built it up. We are developing things like where we can link officer contacts and things like that to specific cases. If we see an officer that's maybe targeting a certain demographic, we're able to track that, put notes in, right? Like that's there forever. So our system, I think, is going to be like, sorry, Shannon Wilson, I'm downstairs at PDMC. So we're a nonprofit firm, just for folks that aren't here.
Yes.
Okay. So our system is going to be more expansive, and we probably want more information than the state will want to receive. At some point, knowing that our attorneys are working in this more expansive, detailed system, it will be duplicative, like for us to enter twice, right? And so I think that for our types of providers, we're going to need to consider like, what is the administrative cost? Because I imagine that we would compile the attorney's information and then we would feed it to you all in a certain way. I don't really see a way to like merge the two together in an efficient way where we're, because asking the attorney to do it once and then do it again, it's not going to work for our model, I think. But I can't, I haven't checked in with everyone. So that's kind of like my concern. Like, have you thought about that, or how do you see it working for folks that already have cloud-based systems, already collecting all of this data? And then here's the second part. I would prefer, like, dream would be that y'all would, have the engagement and build out the entire system, but then just start with like the basics, right? Like if it's for hourly folks and to get paid quicker, like, yes, that's there. If it's to build our own like data set or data set to, for the legislature, then we can do that there. Are you thinking of doing everything at once? Or will it be like, we're gonna address, like we're gonna use a system to address this, and then this, and then this? Because I think if you're building it out piece by piece, you'll be able to like develop trust with providers, maybe with like, we're gonna start here, what works there, then we're gonna move on to this, add this layer. I don't know. So it's kind of like a question, kind of not, but I just like, that's all the things, and there's more, but what do you think?
Let's take that first topic because it's an excellent topic. And for our responses, I would love to ask David if there's any high level information you'd like to share in cloud-based tools. And then we also have Gabe and Mark as panel members to give more detailed responses too, if they prefer.
Sure. Thank you, Mary. So I think the answer is a little ambiguous, but I would say the strategy around your question is addressed through intentional stakeholder engagement. I think what Moss Adams is going to help us do is help collect your kind of feedback to help us understand what we need to have in scope and have our eyeballs on as we are implementing the system. Again, this solution isn't for me, right? I'm not an attorney. I'm an IT director. So I'm going to be hearing from, Ernie as the business sponsor of this solution, and Michelle as the executive sponsor of the solution to prioritize, but I'm going to make some bold guesses that we're going to be probably focusing on finances from the get-go as focus on starting there. We have finite resources, we have finite amount of time, and we want to start first something that's low-hanging fruit that's going to win us some trust, win us some goodwill with the people we're trying to work with. So I think that's going to be our approach. But that's not something that I can say that's set in stone, but that seems like probably a really solid strategy. As it pertains to your solution, where you work and anywhere else that would be tying into a system like this, obviously our primary desire would be that data gets entered into our systems. But there would be, I think, something to be considering around data exports. Again, I have some very talented staff. Without knowing the vendor that's going to be selected, I think there's going to be some questions around that. But I think depending on, like, for example, your solution that you currently work with, I'm going to take a bold guess that there's a way to through a couple button clicks, export certain tables, maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet, and then that way we could perhaps ingest that in a certain way. Again, I can't commit to like this is how we can do it, but we're IT. We have the strong competency to figure it out, right? So, but all at the same time, it has to be we have to eat the elephant one bite at a time. So and that's why this is a 3-year project or a 1.5 year implementation, is because as we get to these certain use cases, we have to kind of stop and really think about what the right approach is for that situation.
Thank you.
Great detail. And Gabe, was there anything else you would like to add?
I think that covers it. Nothing else to offer.
Okay, great. And I will check in with Mark if there was any additional input you would like to add.
I just, in general, would say that there are certain things we're going to have to build together as a base, and then usually an iterative process of continual improvement is called for.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And this kind of leads into more questions around that that we have coming in online. But before I go to our online questions, you mentioned you had a couple other questions.
Oh, I can ask them later. I mean, I'll just always have questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I've taken enough time.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay. Any other questions in the room? Great. We have Mark Lane online, and I'm going to read the question. And it states, for contract attorneys that have existing practice management systems, would the expectation be that our private system would migrate to the state system, or the expectation would be that we maintain our current system for any private cases and public defense cases that would be used for those cases? Curious if I would have to use 2 different systems within my practice. My other question is, what firewalls would be in place that would make sure client information isn't viewed by other attorneys? I would like to start with our technical lead, Mark Hicks, on this question. And Mark, feel free to direct this to David as needed.
Yeah, in general terms, our requirements are requiring role-based access security, so you would be able to assign a case to a specific attorney or attorneys that are on that case. So we would not, in terms of firewalls, the entire design of the system will be required to operate that way.
I will add also, what Mark said is spot on. The data that's in the system, not to get too geeky here, but there's levels of data, and like level 1 is like your Facebook post, and this system is going to house level 3 and level 4. It's the highest kind of data that's out there, and so there is from a security standpoint, there's all sorts of security vetting that we're going to be doing. We again, since we're under the state of Oregon, we're going to be leveraging the state data center, they have a group called the Cybersecurity Services Group. They will be providing all of the oversight from a security standpoint. There's something called a SOC 2 report that will be reviewed. There are certain security controls called NIST and CIS controls that the system's going to have to abide by. And I realize eyes are beginning to glaze over. But these are the things that I care about that really, and I realize you care about as well, but these are the things that we can measure a system's security by. And so by implementing role-based access control, multi-factor authentication, there is an extremely high level of confidence that the data that's going to be in the system, regardless of who's putting it in, is going to be seen by only the people who need to see the data.
And this goes back to that stage gate piece. That's part of stage gate. That security piece, we can't pass any system that doesn't meet their standards. So that team is the team that would be looking at that. And if they don't meet that standard, they don't move forward. And that's the end of that vendor. So they have to prove that they can comply with all of those things.
Mary, I heard a second part of that question that was around somebody who has a mixed practice that's part private practice, part public defense practice. Is the system available to support their private bar practice, or is it only for their public defense practice? My understanding is it's only for their public defense practice.
That is correct. Yes.
Why is that? I mean, if you have a time billing system, which I assume part of this will be, because that's what the state wants, to know how much next time and what kind of time an attorney is doing, why can't that part be used in the private part? Doesn't make any sense.
Great question. We have a lot of detail around this in the technical space around security and access and what data is on what platform. I would love to turn this over to David or Mark to answer.
So I wonder if that might actually be a Janet question.
Oh, okay, great.
Are there not procurement rules around state data and then private citizen data and the mixture and the barriers or the separation of that data?
There are. One of the issues goes to the agency's authority. We can only do public defense work, and so all of the state's resources and its systems are to support that effort. So we are not able to develop a system that is for private use. And so in order, as well as a security issue, we must keep the state's data private, and as you alluded to earlier, the firewalls that go along with that. So we're not able to mix the two. For one thing, it would be a conflict of interest. So we're only able to provide systems that interface and support the work that the legislature has tasked the agency with doing, which is public defense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but I have a comment. I'm sorry.
Please share your comment.
Well, my comment is, if you have a time billing system, okay, and you have, why can't you have a button that says, okay, this is for my private system, my private clients versus the public, and only the system that's developed can only, when that is clicked, can only give the state system and can keep it separate. One would think that that could be done.
I would like to open this to the whole panel. Who would like to address this?
Well, I will say that for when the state's resources can only be used for state systems. Even regardless of what we would like to be able to do, the legislature's direction to the agency has been only for public defense. They resource our agency and they authorize us only to do public defense work.
There's also, I think, a liability around state versus private or public or private data. If we have your data, that's your business, not public defense data, but your data, and that data is breached or that data is lost, there is a liability that we wouldn't be able to cover doing that. So from that standpoint, there really needs to be two systems. They can't even commingle, even if they were, you know, there were certain technological walls in place that separate them. State resources need to be used for state purposes. And that private data really needs to exist outside of that system.
In addition, I think that managing that, so maybe your practice has like 10% private and the rest is public defense, but somebody else's is only 10% public defense and the rest, I mean, that would be a very difficult thing for us to set rules around and then manage in addition to the things. So just outside of the risks and all of those pieces, for us to go, well, you can use it, but you can't because your practice does not align with, I mean, that would be a whole big Pandora's box that I don't know that we should be opening.
Being someone who had a private public mix at 1.2, I'm not sure I would want to have my private billing information in with the state system where there's public billing information. In addition to that, when I first started out, a lot of the cases I did were on a flat fee basis. And so it wasn't, I mean, I did my own internal time tracking, but it wasn't necessarily hourly billing for those cases. So I don't know.
This is a really great discussion.
It would seem that because you're talking about firewalls, that you could put a firewall in. The attorneys, okay, the attorney who's in whatever office is gonna, I assume, have to do time billing, okay? Because that's what this is all leading to. And so I'm not gonna wanna put in my time for I'm not gonna wanna have two systems for putting my time in. I'm gonna wanna, maybe I can push a button to make sure they're separate, because the program hopefully will be able to do that, firewall. But I'm only gonna be wanting to type in one computer, laptop or whatever. So it seems like that's something that could be worked out.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will circle back with you. We'll get a more articulated response and do a little bit of digging, because I completely understand. And if I was in your shoes, I would also want one system for the ease of that. But I think we have some limitations on what we're allowed to do. But you know, without being in front of my own systems to be able to articulate that more effectively, you know, I'll need to do that later.
Thank you.
Great discussion. We do have a question here from one of our panel members, Chair Jennifer Nash. Would you please go ahead and state your question?
Yep, thank you very much. I have a different iteration of the questions that have been asked, and that is, what if I'm putting my private bar panel lawyer hat on now? What if I'm a private bar panel lawyer and I have one or two public defense cases and I don't want to use your system? I only want to use my case management system, but I want to get you my billing information that you need in order to be able to pay my invoices. Is there going to be an ability for me to be able to get you that data in a way that doesn't require me to use the FCMS system as a case management system?
Excellent question. I'm going to approach this, so getting a couple of viewpoints, starting with, I'll look towards Jana, just on procurement with the system, choosing one system. How would you approach that question?
Well, I think it will depend on what our system requirements are in terms of whether we have a component that will allow for an interface. I know there are system requirements that require interface with other agencies for bill paying and those kinds of things. But it will depend on the solution that's proposed in terms of how well it interfaces and the types of other systems that its data is able to speak with. And so it really is what we would need to do, I think, is to look at our current system requirements, what we're telling the business community that we want our system to be able to do, to make sure that it has a variety of interface capabilities.
Thank you, Jana. And I do want to follow up with Moss Adams. If Annie, if you would mind sharing your point of view from a change management perspective on this topic.
And I can jump in here. Hi, everyone. My name is Leanne Stivers. I think when we spoke with the OPDC team about this change impact, what we said was we're going to have to work with the providers on what this could mean. This could mean slower payment processing if there was an alternate process around not leaning into the FCMS system. I think new policies and procedures are potentially going to be a new outcome of the implementation of the new system. So as we move through the change aspect of this project, we really want to make sure that we are engaging the provider community in what that's going to look like and the implications on what that's going to have so that we can bring everyone along. The other thing that we want to make sure that providers understand when we start talking about the change strategy is that this isn't going to happen overnight, that we really want to think about what that implementation plan is going to be and the soft roll of what that's going to look like so everyone can plan for that moving forward and that each of your agency organizations can have your own implementation plan moving forward. And that's going to be a part of the change strategy. So I'll leave it at that.
Hey, thank you, Leanne. I also want to address Chair Nash's question, possibly with Ernie as a business owner for FCMS. What is your viewpoint on those concerns?
I think this is one of the things that until we have a better idea of vendors' requirements and capabilities that I don't feel like I can really speak to.
Yes.
I just wanted to be clear because I kind of had two questions and you've answered one of them really well. But the second question, and that is the interface. Is there a way to, for lack of a better way to put it, dump data? But the second question really is there a way to only use the FCMS system for payment processing if you have a court-appointed case? In other words, you know, is there going to be a requirement that I do, if I'm a private lawyer, all of my case management within the system? Or is it just going to be the basic, you know, I can put the basic data regarding, you know, billing information and hours spent, et cetera, into the program? I think that's the second part of my question.
Thank you. We will address that. And I will turn this over to our panel member, Gabe, to speak to that. And I do want to add a note regarding the vast space of vendor requirements that we are starting to look further into of the needs from our vendors with Moss Adams. So I do want to acknowledge that space is still even forming as we gather more feedback with Moss Adams in their discovery sessions, engaging the community more, hearing from them. So we appreciate all this feedback, and I'm going to turn this over to Gabe.
Thanks, Mary. I think it's a good question, Chair Nash, Gabe Doherty. The system's designed to be end-to-end and that a provider can use it for case management to basically feed the claims process, right? So I can't speak to what the policy would be as it relates to providers and using the system and what the mandate would be, but we've been working with processes already in terms of how would service providers who are not attorneys and attorneys make claims within the system, separate from the case management function. And as David previously mentioned, the low-hanging fruit here is really the claims management process, the financial piece, because that's really where we start seeing the advantages of instantaneous payment and having more robust data for us to make data-informed decisions. So I don't want to say that they're going to be intertwined. I think they could be pretty separate, but again, it's still designed to be an end-to-end process. So there's that advantage there if we need it.
Thank you. That answers exactly what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Thank you, Gabe. And I do want to acknowledge for everyone in attendance, we may hear questions from you that we want to provide a better answer for. So we will take that question and can follow up after. We do have a few more questions coming in online. One from Mark Lane. I'll read the statement here. I think my other concern is checking conflicts. I would need to use 2 different systems if I have to do both. Or how do I migrate my conflict information to the state systems? I will open this to members of the panel in the technology space.
Well, I have to admit, I'm not quite sure what the conflict data reference is. That's not a term I recognize. Is that something unique to?
It would be other clients that they represent, and so cross-matching that they're not representing someone that they have a conflict with because of prior representations.
And I would jump in here because I think I can help is, I think that as we score the system, we're gonna be looking at all of these things which is why Ernie and we have an entire team of folks that are part of the project that'll call out, conflict and all of these pieces so that those are part of the things that we're asking the system to do. And so as we move forward, we'll have a clear picture, but these are all very good things to be looking forward to as far as the functionality of the system, which system we select, so.
Mr. Jeffers in the back of the room, any?
I mean, it's basically a combination of what Ernie was, like a clarification of what it means. It's you're looking for current or former clients that you've represented and whether or not representing someone new creates a conflict with a current or former client. And, with the system we use now, we have a database where a lot of that is stored, and then we have a separate list of people that, so we have our database now where we input everybody that's new, everybody that we have picked up since we have, Clio is the function that we use now. And so it's really easy to go in Clio and just type the name and see what conflict comes up. But we also have attorneys, they all started somewhere else because the trial division is new. And so they all have conflict lists that we request that they bring with them that we also have to store in a master attorney conflict list, and we have to be able to check against that. But it really can be that simple that you have a master conflict list somewhere where the names go that you can check against. And then the system itself will have, I'm certain, an internal conflict check system.
Thank you, Aaron. Are there any other questions? Great questions coming in from online in the room. Let me double check here. Let me see if any hands are raised. Well, I think we are at the end of our question and answer round. If you have more questions, we would love to address those. Please go ahead and email info@opdc.state.or.us and do put FCMS in the subject line. I would love to just open it up to the panel if anyone would like to close the session for us here today.
I hadn't prepared any closing remarks. This is the beginning of a long but important road that we're going to be walking. This agency is growing in headcount and in maturity. There are people and departments and functionality and subject matter expertise today that didn't even exist 6 months ago. Speaking to kind of your comment, Steve, about how things have been changing. Well, I think that's indicative of having to pivot, and that stops when you start maturing as an agency. So I'm really excited about who we have involved. I point to, again, the quality assurance vendor, Moss Adams, as our organizational change management. Those people weren't involved in previous iterations of these attempts, right? I didn't exist 6 months ago, nor did most of my team. So we're taking a fresh look with really motivated people that have a high degree of knowledge and expertise and motivation in this space. So this, as I said, this is the beginning of an engagement, and I'm excited to see where it goes. We thank you for your time, being those that are in attendance today, the folks that we brought in, the panel here. I want to acknowledge the people online, the questions that were mentioned today. As I also mentioned, this is this was a quick hello as we begin this, but I expect that we're going to have another engagement as we get further into this process. We want to make ourselves available for your questions and your concerns, and we want to be engaged. So thank you very much.
Yeah. So I'll just add also that, like, from being in the agency for over 20 years, and more than half of that time, we've been told that we need a new system. And seeing the efforts that have happened over the last 10 years of doing that, I think that we are in a different space than those previous attempts. I know that selfishly, for being a part of the appellate division, we want a case management system that works for us, that helps our attorneys do the work efficiently. And we have, as an agency, every interest in kind of presenting a product that people will use and will want to use, because they'll find that it benefits their practice, because otherwise, as we know, it won't get used like it should, and we won't get the information that we really would like to get to help support the public defense providers and public defense in general in the state. So recognizing that we're facing many issues like that have been brought up that we don't have an answer to yet, I think that we're very motivated to try to find something that will be acceptable to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Do you want a hard copy of the presentation?